Okay, everybody.
Tal.
I have a question for you, Hollis. What are the odds that you join me and buzz your head?
Oh, okay. I've never really buzzed my head before.
Can you make it just like super high number?
Yeah, let's make it a super high number.
What are the odds, bro?
Let's do.
If you say more than 1 out of 5, you're a coward.
Whoa.
That's low.
Grace,
Yeah.
what
That's
the crap?
low.
What you gonna say, Hollis?
Oh my
What you gonna say?
What? Okay, 3.
Grace, count us down.
I'm not doing it though.
Wait, what?
Count us down.
3, 2, 1.
1. Dang it.
Oh.
Whoa. I just got out of my seat. Thank
That
you.
was scary.
Welcome to This is Kingdom. This is Grace.
This is Talon.
This is TJ.
This is Hollis.
And that was so disappointing, y'all. But today, we're talking
I'm
about
proud
the
of you,
talk.
Hollis. That's
1 and
great.
3. Man, dang. Okay, we're talking about the talk, Trust in the Lord by Elder Paul P. Piper. It's a good one.
And that's a good name, anyways.
No, yeah, he's
Paul?
like, the Pieper family did this. I'm like, whoa, that sounds really good. I love this talk, guys. I think one of my favorite parts about doing this podcast with y'all and reading these talks is we get to really just dive into one talk for 1 week. Because this talk, Tal and I were just talking about it before. I didn't really remember this talk or much of it. But as I read it, it kind of hit me that it was so good and kind of what I needed to hear for this week specifically. And the beginning of the talk, he basically just talks about trust falls. Like in that first paragraph, he's like, this is what a trust fall does, and this is what my family does. And it reminded of me in high school. I feel like we would do trust falls all the time. And I don't know if you guys did this in high school, but we would go up to random people and yell out trust fall and just follow.
Dude, I did the same thing.
Is that like a guy thing?
Yeah,
Grace,
what
did
a
you do
weird
that?
thing. I personally have a few memories, but not a lot. Not a lot.
I would just like go up to random people like trust fall, and sometimes it would hurt
If
more.
you
than
haven't
other
tried it, you
times.
need to try it.
My
It's
favorite
fun.
are when my friends did it and they just didn't catch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hit their head.
And we do it for the content, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, this will be so fun. And it was kind of interesting reflecting on that because we would do it to all these random people, do it all the time. And he compares trust falling of placing your trust in someone catching you. And I feel like in high school, I feel like a lot of us can relate is we put our trust in a lot of things that didn't necessarily catch us. I feel like I put my trust in social media sometimes, like Instagram or Twitter. By the way, we just found out someone in this squad has had a Twitter account that we will find one day. But we would just put trust in a lot of different things. And it reminded me that there are so many better things to put trust in. And guys, this was the interesting thought I had during this talk, which I really loved. And it was kind of like, whoa, this is crazy. With trust falls, I feel like in trusting someone, whether it's another person or God, it requires falling. And with that falling, I feel like falling can look like a lot of different things. I feel like it can look like sharing a secret with someone and hoping that they don't share it with anyone and that you can trust them. I feel like falling can look like being vulnerable with someone and making sure they accept you and love you. I feel like falling can look like almost having a goal and failing or coming short and still knowing that you have worth and that person or that thing will still be there where you can still have success somewhere else. It reminded me with that with God. And I feel like where in my life am I showing God that I'm falling so he can catch me? And I feel like it's really hard to trust someone or something or even God if you're not falling. And I look back and reflect on all my life. And I feel like the times that I fell or the times that I failed or the times that I tried to make a decision, I had to make sure that God was the one that was going to catch me and my belief and trust was in him. But it required me falling first. And it was hard for me to have a relationship if I didn't trust that he could catch me. And I feel like falling is so essential. And I feel like that looks different in all of our lives. But it was such a huge moment for me, guys, in studying this talk that I have to fall. And I have to trust that God will let me fall in the right place. And for me, when I look back, one of the best places I was able to fall was here with you guys. One of the best places I was able to fall because I was willing to was the job I'm in. I think sometimes the most treasured relationships that I have is because I chose to fall. And God really caught me in all of those places, even though it wasn't the place I thought I would fall.
That's so good, bro. That's so good. We need to fall. And I'm just thinking, because in seminary, we're doing our doctrinal mastery, 2 Nephi 2:25, right? Adam fell, the men might be. And it's so cool that it's not just Adam that's fallen, so that we could come and have joy, but in a way, symbolically, like we follow him in falling as well. And I'm just thinking of the times when I've had to fall. And I just remember even before we got in that car to go to Mexico, bro, like I was falling, bro. And I was like, I'm not going, man. Like, I don't have my passport. Like, I don't know how to do a money order thing. I was like 7-Eleven, like running around, like trying to. Anyway, and this is just the origin story before we drove down to pick up Grace from an orphanage. But
That's where we met.
it's so true, man. We got to fall. And I love how the thing that hits me, Hollis, as you talk about that is like, I love when God can catch us through people, because when I was afraid to fall in this situation, it was my mom that was like, you get in that car. You get in that car with Talon and Emily, or sometimes it's a teacher, or sometimes it's a friend, or sometimes it's been you guys, or sometimes it's my wife, where I think God puts people in our life to help to catch us when we fall. But we got to fall, man. That's cool. I like that.
You know what's interesting too is I think we see falling short as such a negative thing. But talking about this, I almost wonder if God gets excited when we fall short, because it's in those moments that if we choose, we can most build a relationship with him. We can most see his power. We can most see his goodness. And I think life is almost designed to be more than us. Like, we are going to be put into situations that we fall short, and maybe that's intentional, and maybe those moments can be the greatest blessings in our life, because if we choose to turn to God in those moments, that's when we can build the most real relationship with him.
I think something that's so interesting is that, like, I think a little bit right now we're talking about falling like it's not scary. Like, even when you do a trust fall, like, your tummy, like, at least, like, my tummy goes to my toes. Like, I'm so scared. Like, I'm like, ah! And I personally am very much like that with trusting as well, unfortunately. And I think the reason is we're so afraid of disappointment. And we're so scared to trust someone because we are so scared that we will end up disappointed, that we will end up on the floor, that we'll end up in a situation that's worse than where we began. And I think it's the same thing with God, is that I think we have these moments that we're like, I would maybe rather just not trust you and just stay exactly where I am than trust you and risk falling, than trust you and risk disappointment. And it's so interesting because I think just the word falling instantly makes me think of a story about a boy named Peter. And there's this moment when his best friend's Jesus. You've probably heard of him. And what happens is Jesus is walking on water to this boat that Peter and all his friends are on. And Peter decides he wants to get out. And he's like, I want to do that. Like, Jesus will invite me into this situation with him. This will be the coolest experience ever. Like, I'm going for it. Like, I'm in. And he jumps in the water and he's walking on water. And then all of a sudden, all the winds come and they were already there, but it was windy and it was a storm and the waves were gigantic. And he was so scared. And then he fell in the water. But the interesting thing is that while that might be the end of the story that we have in scripture, there's no way, to me, that's the end of the story in Peter's life. Because there is no chance in my mind that Peter and Jesus swam back to the boat. There's no way. Which means that Jesus was there within reaching distance, that when he fell, he would pick him back up instantly and they would do something miraculous together. And I think that's what we need to realize when we're so afraid of trusting, when we're so worried about disappointment. It's not the disappointment that we need to be afraid of, because we know that a miracle is coming after. And I think that's as true for Peter as it is for us, that yeah, we're going to fall. And you know what? Sometimes we might drown and we might sink and it might not work out and we might end up deeply disappointed.
I love that. It reminds me, I feel like there's 3 big pillars in just kind of like the history of our church and just with God. And that's like the fall of Adam and Eve. And that's Christ being resurrected. And of course, the church being restored. And it's so interesting that after the fall of Adam and Eve, the next big event is the miracle. It's Christ coming down and laying his life for us. And I feel like with every decision we have to make as well, I think it's so interesting is I feel like the unknown reminds me a lot of falling as well. Like, I'm going to make a decision, whether it's with a career or relationship or even school or anything. I'm going to make a decision and I have to tell God, you know what? I feel like falling right now. Like, I have to make that step and I feel like I'm going to fall. But I know whether I fail or I don't, I can have peace that God will be there in the unknown, that God will be there in that fall.
Well, it's crazy. In the talk, Elder Piper says that he chose to fall. He acted on a prompting to move his family out to another place, to a new job. And he said he moved out there and it all felt good. And then everything fell apart. Like things were falling apart with the job. Things were really tough with his family. He was having a baby and they had big medical bills because I think he said his daughter had some big medical issues and they didn't really have the insurance with the work and everything. And he was struggling. And I think that's going to happen to us sometimes is we're going to choose to fall and it's not going to be pretty right away. It's not going to feel like we're getting caught comfortably right away. But he said that God taught him something so important in that moment. And I actually really needed that this morning because I was feeling kind of off and feeling some opposition. And he said that God taught him, don't ask why, right? Don't ask why things didn't work out when you fell, but ask like, what can I learn from this, right? And once he did that, and once he engaged in that process, then over time, everything was able to work out with his daughter and with his work and everything. And so I love that lesson. Don't ask why, ask, what do you want me to learn? It can help us in that process if the fall doesn't end up being pretty, you know what I mean? Because it's not.
It's so good. That's so good. I think what happens so often too is that we learn to trust God in certain areas, but then we get in different areas of our life and we don't trust him anymore. And that I see it so much with return missionaries. You go on your mission, you see God show up, you see him deliver, you see him pull through time and time again. But then you get home and all of a sudden you get in a dating struggle and you're like, man, I'm screwed. It's like, no, hold on. Like God pulled through for you on your mission. He'll pull through for you in dating. Or you start struggling figuring out your major, your career, school, whatever it is. And you're like, oh man, like I don't even know what to do with it. It's like, it's the same. It doesn't matter what area of your life it is. God wants to be there in that part of it. And I think we limit him because we think, no, this is separate from God. When God's like, no, I can help you in every aspect of your life.
Well, and it's interesting because I think, especially for me in moments of disappointment, is when I expect God to not be showing up. And today I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw this girl's post, and her dad had just passed away last night of brain cancer. And she wrote this, and it's seriously one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. She said, while this entire experience has absolutely pulverized my heart, I've already seen a million ways it has changed me for the better, softened me, and brought up love I didn't even know I had in me. Now, when I go to the grocery store, I think, is this the worst day of this person's life, just like it is mine? I try my best to be gentle and warm because I know just how that feels. And the thing is that, and I won't try to speak for her, but if it were me, that has got to be one of the most disappointing days of her entire life. And it would be so easy for her to look at the situation and say, God didn't catch me. Where was God? God let me fall. God let me be disappointed. The miracle didn't show up. But rather, she is still mourning and sad and grieving. But she looked around and she said, I have been changed by God in this situation. And he might have caught me in a way that I didn't expect. Because maybe there's something in my life that I need to do that will be different because of the life that I'm living right now. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to realize is that, you know what? Trusting's scary and it's hard, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way we thought or the way we intended. But something I know about trusting, especially God, is that God will always catch us.
And what I love about that, and I just want to end with, is I read this quote on Pinterest and it just reminded me of it actually. And this is in terms of a relationship, and this one can be with God. But it says, things need to fall apart so the right things can fall together, which I really, really love. And I think God is the one that is there to catch us, like Grace says.
When the best of me is barely breathing, when I'm not somebody I believe in, hold on to me. When I miss the light, the night is stolen. When I'm slamming all the doors you've opened, hold on to me. Hold on to me. Hold on to me when it's too dark to see you. When I am sure I have reached the end. Hold on to me when I forget I need you. When I let go, hold me again. I could rest here in your arms forever, 'cause I know nobody loves me better. Hold on to me. Hold on to me.
See you next week.